like to propose two research agenda items, which is related to labor market data. One is to do research on how to bring confidence into labor market data. And this is not an innocent proposal. It has wide range implication in terms of the public, how they view the data, not just the researcher, the government people, the parliament, because they are the ones who will put money in statistics if they believe in it. And my feeling is in many countries, including Egypt, there is some resentment from the side of the public, including the government and members of parliament, that they are not very happy with the numbers. They don't believe it. Now, that's one aspect. I will show you simple three slides. The other proposal is to seriously look into the demand side of labor. As a number of people this morning have presented, and also the country, 5 countries, many of the indicators were supply-side indicators. And even those countries that said we have this type of surveys, which are demand-side surveys, when you look carefully, they are not really answering the main demand question. So these are the two areas. Now I have 3 slides, so it won't take that long. A simple slide which shows labor supply, labor demand. Labor supply, which we all know, is basically in the individual. From the statistical point of view, you are sampling persons. And you are measuring persons, employed, unemployed, underutilization, many other characteristics. And labor force survey is the main and accepted source of data. I think on this issue, there is a almost universal agreement that labor force survey is a good source of measurement of labor supply. And I mentioned earlier this morning that from the last count, 74 countries are having regular labor force surveys. That means annual or less frequent, more frequent, and covering something like 80% of the workforce in the world. So it has become a kind of standardized and accepted source of data. Now, on the demand side, the unit is an enterprise or an establishment or a kind of activity in the language of national accounts. And the unit of measurement, what you count, is a job, which is not always the same as a person. And what I would like to suggest is to look at the demand side with the view as a mirror of the supply side. Why? Because it is in fact demand and supply, but also because the labor supply has been successful. In the last 50 years, we have been very good in statistics to conduct this, and then we speak with each other, we understand each other. But when you go to the labor demand, We don't have the same symmetry. Now, but there is a symmetry, but we are not exploiting it. For example, in the demand side, the equivalent of employment is occupied jobs, which we measure through establishment survey. There is also a mirror image of unemployment. Is the unoccupied job or the vacant job. And there is a definition of vacant job which follows the definition of unemployment. Unemployment, three characteristics: not employed, seeking employment, available for employment. Now, vacant job is a job which is not occupied, is equivalent to not employed, that the employer is actively trying to fill it. It's not a job which is in the organization chart of a ministry or a company or a bank, there is a job there in the organization chart, but there is no active effort from the side of the employer to fill it up. And then it is a job that will be available to fill immediately or just after. So you see, there is a equivalent. And in fact, some countries are measuring it that way. For example, UK, the Office of National Statistics, has a one-question survey. One-question survey, which companies, they dial the number of vacant posts with this definition that they have this month. And since it's linked, they know which company. So it's only dialing the number. So what I'm trying to say that we should try to fill this gap on the demand side, but perhaps looking at the success of the supply side and try to emulate. Now, here I put this title, Single Most Data Gaps. I'm sure in English it's not correct, but I kept it because it conveys something. Is that if you ask me, I am a statistician, I'm working in labor, and I've been doing that since my student date in the 60s. And always the same thing, doing this. And today is 14 or 15 of December, 14th of December, I'm also doing this. And if you ask me, what is just one indicator that tell me one number that you think is the most important on the labor supply? And what is one number, not many, that is important on the labor demand? I will answer this. I would say that on the labor supply, the most important number, single number, of course we want many numbers, but if somebody put a gun here and says, just give me one, don't give me two, then I would say youth unemployment rate. I put in parentheses labor underutilization because I have some doubt that maybe labor underutilization, the LU4 also. But I think youth unemployment is real. I know the problems with it. Ragi mentioned it targets a particular category of people, usually those who can queue. But if you look at it as a single number, and you look at it from the perspective that I'm telling, it has power. First, I suggest, and wherever I go, I suggest, but I never get successful, is that statistical offices should publish youth unemployment first, then unemployment. Youth unemployment rate should be the first number that is published. It should be the headline number. Now, why? First, because youth unemployment rate is higher than general unemployment rate. And many people, when you publish unemployment rate as the headline, they say it's not correct. How can you say it's 8% unemployment rate? In my country, it's more. Then when you try to understand why these people say that, they are not stupid. People are, why are you saying this? Then you find out that because in their mind, unemployment is of the young people. For example, I give you an example. Somebody says, whom I respect, says that, come on, you have worked all your life in this, but I think you have wasted your life because this is all wrong. Then I try to understand why is it wrong. I said, well, because look, my nephew, he has no job. I said, okay, who is your nephew? How old is he? 22. I have another niece. She just graduated, and she has no job. So how old is she? 21. And then when you started to count his total number of nephews, we found that for this one person, the unemployment rate of his nephews is 30%, which is what the statistical office is publishing for young people, 30%. So, but the statistical office publishes the general unemployment rate. So he doesn't connect with that. So that's why I think youth unemployment rate has that power. Second reason, is that the young people, not only they are active in terms of labor, but they are also very vocal in society. So by making attention to them is important. So my suggestion, I know I will not be successful, but I keep on saying, youth unemployment rate should be published before general unemployment rate. Not just youth first publish unemployment rate, and then say in table 33, you will find in column 8, in line 55, you will find youth unemployment rate. Not that way. So now let me be a little more serious on the labor demand. If I've been asked, give me one number on labor demand, I would say is job creation in the business sector. Again, I know the deficiency of that because the business sector is not the whole. There is informal sector and all these things. But if I have to give one number, I will be giving the job creation in the business sector with well-defined concept of business sector. Now, what is job creation? Job creation is the difference between job gains and job losses. Job gains are coming from two sources. New establishments are hiring because they are created and they are hiring. So this is the job gain. And existing establishments which are expanding, also before they had that many jobs, now they have a little more. And then job losses are those that go out of business. So the worker also goes out. The job is, maybe the worker is still alive, but the job doesn't exist anymore. And then contracting establishment. Now, this is the way one should measure job creation, not by looking at the change in employment. And to do that, you need to have good establishment survey data on employment. Now, my last slide is about CAPMAS. On the labor force survey, I've been working with CAPMAS, and we tried to bring the 19 ICLS definitions into the labor force survey, bring a rotation design, try to calculate calibrated weights so that the numbers don't fluctuate that much, and try to put youth unemployment rate at the forefront. Now, it will take some time before I see whether I've been successful on that, but it seems working well. Now, on the establishment side, we heard this morning that there is an establishment survey. The title is Employment, Wages and Hours of Work. But when you look carefully, it's really hours of work and earnings. It's not about employment. Because the numbers that is published is the coverage of the survey. How many workers were in the establishments in which I went? So it's not the employment part is not taken seriously. But the others, hours of work, and so on, they are averages. So it's the average hours of work and average monthly earnings, which we tried during my trip here to convert these to average hourly earnings. As you know, you cannot divide, as somebody said, average monthly earnings divided by the number of hours. You don't get average hourly earnings because the average of a ratio is not the ratio of the average. So you get some bias. But anyway, we say that the hours of work and earnings are acceptable. But employment, job creation, is not there. You cannot measure even change in employment from that survey. So what I proposed is that first, take the word employment in the title of your survey seriously. It is in the title of your survey, but you don't do anything about it. So that first take this into consideration, put it in your mind, that this is also employment. So are you measuring employment? And then I propose that make a labor accounting by comparing LFS, which, as I said, is a successful source, with establishment survey. The first reaction was that this is not comparable. I said, okay, I know that, but you can make it comparable using labor accounting system. Now, so I showed in one column, there are two columns in accounting system, LFS in one side, establishment survey in the other side. You start in Egypt, 26 million people employed from the supply side and 1.7 million jobs from the demand side. Now, when you deduct from labor force those areas, sectors that are not covered by the establishments, you deduct. From the other side, you weight them because they are at present unweighted. For example, it says that we heard this morning that it is establishment survey 10 and plus. If you look carefully, it's not 10 and plus. There are some 10 and plus. There are few, 166 establishments in the whole of Turkey, whole of Egypt, which are in, I was looking at you, which are 10 and plus, 10 to 24, only 166. So then you have to either increase it or weight them because they are representing much more. But they are not, they are just added there. So when you do this from the demand part of the labor accounting, we arrived at the end, and we didn't finish, 5.7 million one side, 2.8 million the other side. We started with 26 million and 1.3 million. Here we added, the other one we deducted. So we can arrive at the closing. So if you do this, then you will, by sector, by branch, then you will know the weakness of your survey. So that's what I propose. Do that, and it takes you only 7 days to do it, and don't publish it. But by doing that, you get familiar with your own data, and you will see the deficiencies. Then I'm proposing some, I won't go through it, some proposals on sample design and on estimation methodology and so on. But what I want to go to the number 5, I think Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia, and probably Algeria, and definitely in the long run, Sudan, should go from census-based surveys of establishments to registered-based surveys. Now, I know, again, that registers are not good, and we cannot use them. Yes. But if you don't use them, they never become good. You have to use them. In Egypt, there is a Ministry of Trade and Industry, Social Security, and then the tax system. So by using them, you put pressure on, you become a client of Ministry of Trade and Industry. So then they know that there is somebody looking at them, because they are only registering things for the administrative purpose of ministry, not for statistical. And you will be surprised that statistics is more demanding than the ministry. I even say that usually statistics more careful than the police in the registration of the police. So by having CAPMAS or the statistical office look at the register for statistical purposes, it puts pressure on the producer of the register in order to improve. So I mentioned, and I here say it, that if you do that, maybe in 20 years, you will have good register. But no, 20 years will come. But if you don't do anything in 20 years, you are still doing census data, using economic census, which is 5 years old. But then, where are the new companies that are being born? They are not there, and this is a part of job creation. So now we keep on saying there is a policy of job creation. We do economic analysis on job creation, but where is your data on job creation? So this is my proposal for the agenda. Establishment surveys and registers, and the other part on looking at headline numbers. I think ERF has a good reputation. If ERF says that yes, youth unemployment rate is important. CAP must please put it at the top of your publication. They will do so. But if you say, no, youth unemployment doesn't show anything, it shows only the rich people, which is not totally true, in fact, then you are defeating the purpose. Knowingly that it's not the best, but it's the single best. Thank you.